In our final segment for the week, let's start off by talking about essential fatty acids. As a reminder, the word essential is always going to refer to nutrients, vitamins, minerals, whatever, that cannot be made by the body. So essential fatty acids must be supplied by the diet. There are two main classes or two main types of these essential fatty acids, and these are linoleic and linolenic acid. You can look at table 5.4 in your book for the various roles of these essential fatty acids. These are converted to eicosanoids in the body, and eicosanoids are important because they regulate various body functions in the body. They're a little bit like hormones that each has a specific role or something that it's regulating. But some things that eicosanoids are regulating might be something like muscle relaxation or contraction, immune response to injury, blood clot formation. So again, they're a little bit like hormones, but these are coming or they're derived from our essential fatty acids. Deficiencies of essential fatty acids, while they're rare, they can be they can have some negative effects. So deficiency of essential fatty acids is virtually unknown in the U.S. and Canada, and the body can store some or small amounts. So again, deficiency is very rare, but here are some negative effects of deficiencies that can result. So there could be reproductive failure, skin abnormalities, kidney and liver disorders, and growth and vision impairment in infants. So these essential fatty acids are very important. And again, check out table 5.4 for some of the other roles that they play in the body. So let's take a closer look at these fatty acids. So we have omega-3 fatty acids, which we'll talk about first, and then we have our omega-6 fatty acids. So omega-3 fatty acids are the alpha-linolenic acids. These are converted to DHA and EPA, which have been proven to have some beneficial effects in promoting heart health and then protecting the brain as it ages. Also, in small children, DHA and EPA may also be important for brain development. These both omega-3 and omega-6 are components of all cell membranes. Omega-3s are also important for helping to reduce inflammation, and they're found most highly in the oils of fish, but they're also found in walnuts, dark green leafy greens, flaxseed, and then canola and soybean oil. Omega-6 fatty acids are linoleic acids, and these are converted to arachidonic acid, which is a major precursor for most of those eicosanoids, which again are regulating various functions in the body. Omega-6s are important because they're required for the growth and maintenance of skin, normal functioning of the reproductive system. So refer back to the previous slide when we talked about deficiencies can be related to reproductive failure or skin abnormalities. This is why. So this point right here, very important, related to those deficiency symptoms. Like omega-3s, omega-6s are also components of cell membranes, and these are found primarily in vegetable oils. So you can check out table 5.6 in your book for more sources of both of these omega-3 and omega-6. The recommendations for omega-3 fatty acids, from the dietary guidelines, they recommend 8 to 12 ounces of seafood should be consumed each week, and each serving should provide approximately 250 milligrams of EPA and DHA. So again, those are going to be derived from our omega-3 fatty acids. There are special considerations for pregnant and lactating women as well as children. So it's still recommended that these populations consume seafood because they are a very high source of protein, they're low in saturated fat, and they provide other beneficial nutrients. However, it's important to be aware of the mercury content of seafood. So for pregnant and lactating women, they need to make sure that they're not consuming those fish sources that may be very high in mercury. For children, the recommendation drops to 3 to 6 ounces a week. So not quite as high as adults, but still, they should be consuming seafood several times a week. What if you don't eat fish? Should you take fish oil supplements? This is somewhat debatable. In general, I would say they're not recommended, and your book also says that the fish oil supplements are not recommended. They may provide some benefit, but there also can be risks such as excessive bleeding. So, and when they look at things over the long term, the fish oil supplementation hasn't necessarily been protective in preventing heart disease or heart attacks or other things related to heart health. So I think the debate is still out. While there are some risks, it may not be enough to prevent someone from taking them. So I would just use caution and do your homework before just going out and buying any old fish oil supplement. You can look for omega-3 enriched foods. So eggs might be a food that you would see that might say that they're enriched with omega-3 fatty acids. And then flaxseed is actually another source of omega-3 fatty acids. So if you don't want to eat seafood or you don't like seafood, or maybe you're allergic, try flaxseed for a source of getting your omega-3 fatty acids. This picture is also from your book, so you can see the content of EPA and DHA, those fish that provide higher amounts, and then those that, you might want to be careful of for mercury. So definitely a good table to check out. If you know someone that's pregnant, if you're pregnant, or if you have small children, this is definitely a good resource. All right, let's talk about trans fats and the processing of unsaturated fats to form trans fats. So hydrogenation is adding hydrogen atoms. So it's basically making a liquid fat or an unsaturated fat more saturated. So it's making a fat more solid, and this is going to make it more resistant to oxidation. So hydrogenation, or adding those hydrogen atoms, increases the smoking point of the fat, and it also increases the shelf life. So this is why hydrogenation, if you check out a food label or ingredient list, it might say partially hydrogenated oil might be in there. The reason these products are added or these ingredients are used is because they increase the shelf life. So something can sit on your shelf for a long time and not go moldy, whereas if it just had regular unsaturated fat, it would probably spoil quicker. So from a processing standpoint, trans fats, or these processed fatty acids, play an important role. For our health, not so much. So there can be some negative nutrition effects or health effects related to these unprocessed fats. It can cause a loss of essential fatty acids and vitamin K, and you also basically lose the beneficial effects of unsaturated fats because they're now saturated. And we know that saturated fats increase our risk for heart disease because they can increase our LDL cholesterol, they can cause plaque buildup, so really not a good thing. And this is really what's causing that. These processed unsaturated fats are trans fats. And again, these have negative effects on both our LDL and HDL. So they increase HDL and they lower our HDL, which is not good at all. You may have heard about the trans fat ban, which in November of 2013, the FDA proposed that trans fats be banned from all food products. Basically, they realized that these partially hydrogenated oils were no longer generally recognized as safe. So you might have heard of different ingredients or additives being referred to as GRAS, G-R-A-S. This stands for generally recognized as safe. So up until this point, trans fats were considered to be a safe additive or a safe ingredient. But in 2013, the FDA decided that this is no longer the case. There's been all this evidence that the trans fats can have a negative impact on health. So this rule or this ban says that trans fats can no longer be used directly or as ingredients in another food product without having prior FDA approval for use as a food additive. And actually, many companies have reduced trans fats in their products in recent years, but the ban would require total elimination. So remember when we talked about food labels and something could say it's trans fat free, but it could actually have up to a half a gram in the product per serving? This ban would require that there are no trans fats at all. So if something was trans fat free, it would be trans fat free. There would be 0 grams of trans fat. Another thing to keep in mind is that some animal products have trans fats naturally occurring. So especially animals that have multiple stomachs like cows. Some dairy products have trans fat naturally occurring. Now it's not clear whether naturally occurring trans fats versus those that are processed and man-made are, do they have different health benefits? We're not sure yet. However, the other beneficial nutrients and vitamins found in the dairy product in relation to the amount of trans fat that there is naturally occurring, you should still consume the milk and the dairy products for those health benefits. So this trans fat ban still has not been passed, even though it was proposed in 2013. So hopefully there will be a final ruling on this sometime in the near future. So how can you improve your fat intake? We want to focus on those essential fatty acids that we can't make by the body. We want to focus on replacing saturated fats with monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, and not just adding these to our diet. So replace, don't add. Just because you can't see a fat doesn't mean that it's not there. So a meat, looking at the marbling in meat, that adds up quickly. Thinking about other products that might have fats added. So definitely checking the ingredients list and the food label. And again, we want to focus on the quality of our fats. Quantity is definitely important, but focus on good quality fats because they are important and they are essential for good. Other tips to improve your fat intake, again, checking the food label, checking that total fat, saturated fat. Are the monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fat label on there? They're not required to be, but products that have those in them generally will label them. So check out a package of nuts. Nuts are a good source of monounsaturated fat, so they're going to have that on the label. And also check the ingredient list. Choose unsaturated or a liquid or good fats for heart health. Focus on getting your seafood, so 8 to 12 ounces a week. And then how can you modify recipes to make them healthier? Can you use a low-fat product? Can you use something that is an equivalent substitute? So, an example might be using Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. So think of ways that you can modify recipes, using olive oil or some other vegetable oil instead of butter. So think of ways that you can, what you already consume or recipes you already love, how can you make them healthier? We also want to limit our saturated and trans fats, so we can do this by reducing the amount of butter, margarine, and shortening we use, limit consumption of processed baked goods, choose lean cuts of meat, choose fat-free or low-fat milk and products, again, replacing our solid fats with MUFAs and PUFAs, so cooking with olive and canola oil, adding nuts or avocados to salads instead of bacon or cheese, other olive oil and vinegar instead of cream-based dressings, having nuts as a snack instead of cookies or cakes or chips. Lastly, let's talk about how the view of fat has changed over time. So just like there's problems with a low carbohydrate diet, low fat diets are also not a good idea. They may be low in calories, but this can still increase the risk for heart disease because you're probably over-consuming on carbohydrates. And we know that excess carbohydrates are going to be stored as fat. So you're really not doing yourself any favor by cutting fat out of your diet. Other nutritious foods may be excluded from a low-fat diet, so think about essential fatty acids that are important. Nuts are a good source of fat, healthy fats, and then those low-fat diets are very difficult to follow. The research on high-fat diets, really what research has shown is that the type of fat matters. So a Mediterranean-type diet, that these are actually fairly high in fat. They fall within the AMDR, but a Mediterranean-type diet is actually good for health. The current guidelines state that fat intake should be 20 to 35% of total energy intake, and again, we want to make sure our fat intake is reduced in saturated and trans fat, and our overall diet is controlled calories. So olive oil is sort of the key player in the Mediterranean diet, but it's not a magic potion, and it's still a fat, so it still is very energy dense. It's going to provide a lot of energy for a very little amount. So olive oil provides phytochemicals that are acting as antioxidants. It can play a role in reducing blood clotting factors, and it also interferes with inflammatory responses that lead to disease progression. So this might be related to heart disease. So olive oil definitely has some health benefits, but like anything else, it should be used in moderation. So there are other healthful aspects of the Mediterranean diet that may play a role in this diet, these individuals really having an overall healthy lifestyle, a lower risk of heart disease. So the Mediterranean diet is also lower in their intake of red meat. They have a higher intake of nuts, fruits, and vegetables, so they're having a good intake of fiber and phytochemicals. They eat a lot of seafood and fish, so they have an increased intake of their MUFAs and PUFAs, and then they have a very low trans fat intake. So try to follow a Mediterranean diet. This meets the AMDR. It focuses on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and seafood. So this is really a good model that we can use in our own lives.